how it all comes together. So this is not new. It's kind of a revolution of what's been kind of going on for the last 50 plus years. If you look at back in 1957, originally it was an immersive movie theater where you go and kind of experience kind of what you're doing today. You go, you have an experience, you see what was going on. And then that generally started to change. I remember in 2011-ish, the Kinect came out. And I was so excited to come home and play on it. And I could like move my hands around and the device would interact with me. It was a really cool experience and really kind of understanding what the art of the possible was and really kind of drove some of my excitement as to what was going on. Fast forward, you saw the Google Glass announcement. I think for me, and I can't believe it was 2017, but when Apple came on stage and they announced the AR kit, I remember talking to my boss and we were working on mobile apps at the time. And I'm like, well, what can we do with this? And we spent some time, and on Monday morning we came in and put a faucet on the boardroom floor to kind of get that experiment and kind of understand what the art of the possible is. And that's really what we're talking about here today as we move forward. Like in 2023, the big announcement of the Apple Vision Pro, it's very interesting to see how it's been received and how it's being used. It really paints the picture for where we're going to go in the future. Who knows? I'm excited to get there. So another interesting slide here, and I've got two slides to go over real quick here. If we look at the space where we're looking forward, if you look at this, this was from late 2023. They're talking about digital twins, kind of immersive experiences, and spatial computing. How many people in the room have heard of spatial computing? It's here now. It's not something that's 5 or 9 years out. It's here today. And you fast forward to look at this as Gartner. I was looking at generative AI 2 years ago, trying to understand what they were talking about, what it really meant for Kimberly-Clark. And today, it's already within that now sort of phase. So it's amazing how quickly technology can leapfrog and kind of get us to where we're at today. So if we're talking about marketing, it's really understanding where the consumer is at. And if you look at the addressable market, it's kind of important to take a look that they're estimating over 620 billion possible users. And I don't think we really know where this can go. This is just an estimate. And if we truly get that adoption curve, it's really going to leapfrog where we have to be as a brand or where we're trying to market to individuals. So another interesting stat, if you look at this, about 90% of the younger generation is looking for that augmented shopping experience where they're able to interact with the item that they have in their house. Maybe they're buying a faucet, maybe they're buying a couch. They want to see it. They want to make sure that it fits within their environment. 7 out of 10 shoppers expect it to be there, which is very interesting. I remember when ARKit launched, like nobody's like, nah, that's just a fad, you guys are crazy. But users today are expecting it. How do we adapt to make sure that we're actually hitting that today? Let's see. This was another interesting slide about spatial computing. We actually changed this last night. Originally I said that spatial computing is about to change the course of technology and innovation and the ways that people work and live. It's actually changing the way that we work and live today. In some of our plants, we've got augmented heads-up displays where users are getting real-time information about what's going on within the plant. So some of the technology that we think about that's going to be in the future is already here, and how do we address that market and the different generations that are using it? My kid today, I have an Oculus Quest at home. He wears it and has a lot of fun playing with it. It makes me a little sick sometimes when I use it, depending on the game that I'm playing. But he's like, nope, I'm good. And he just keeps on playing. So it's a lot of fun. So if we look at this, what are some opportunities and challenges that we're going to need to address? I think it's really important to look at privacy, security, understanding how our data is being used. I remember when Google Glass came out, the big thing there was, how is my device? Am I being recorded? And if you think about it today, how many people walk around with their cell phones kind of filming what's going on in the work environment around it? We've really kind of become used to it being in our environment. So as new devices and new ways of reaching the community come out, we're going to get used to that. So I'm going to leave it on this slide. Where do we go today? Where are we going tomorrow? Adam, over to you.
Yeah, so we'll introduce our esteemed panel here in a moment. Before we get into that, I don't know if anyone noticed on the last slide the piece about analytics, and it makes me think about marketing, right? Anyone in here, does attribution matter at all for getting your budget internally? No? Okay. So that's going to be more and more true. It'll be a recurring theme. We're going to be looking at these spatial computing applications as a ubiquitous part of your marketing mix. I realize that, depending on the organization that you're with, some companies already allocate for this, and we'll do a little sampling here in a minute of who's doing what projects and how long those have been going on. But yeah, I wanted to set the stage from different perspectives today during our conversation. We talked about Shawn's role in innovation. We also have Edie Kirkman with us. Edie is VP of Digital at GoTo Foods, formerly Focus Brands. We've got Gustavo Sanabria from CAPTIVATAR. Gustavo is an enterprise-grade, very high-quality provider in our space. And then we've got Darryl Wright from Southern Company. Darryl offers a client perspective here, and he does quite a bit there, but we'll let him touch on those pieces. I feel like before we dive into all of our questions and our discussion here, why don't you each go ahead and tell us a little bit more about yourselves? Shawn or Edie, if you want to jump in.
Hi everyone, I'm Edie Kirkman. My background is really working on creating experiences, mobile and web experiences for consumers. So I work for a variety of companies that's customer facing, including hotel companies, now in the restaurant, fast casual business, and then really, any consumers that's working with customers on the front line as far as like retail locations and things like that. In addition, how do we market to our customers to get more inbound leads? So I've been in B2B space as well.
My name is Shawn Crosley. I am part of the Digital Innovation Engineering team at Kimberly-Clark. I lead a group of engineers and architects who bring ideas to life. The way that I like to put it, I work with 4 innovation leads across the globe, and I make their dreams come true by figuring out how we can bring pilots and proof of concepts to life, mainly focused on what is in the future, and trying to figure out where to go with that. And it's unbroken ground in a lot of cases.
Thank you. Gustavo?
Hi, I'm Gustavo Sanabria. I'm the CEO of CAPTIVATAR. We are a local company that is based in Alpharetta, and we focus on guiding our clients on how to bring a better consumer experience, client experience through different technologies. Augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, but the focus is always to analyze first what is the end user needing to solve a problem or to figure out how a table looks like in their backyard. Things like that eventually will allow the users to decide faster to make a purchase. And that's the general plan for marketing with these technologies.
Yeah, and I'm Darryl Wright. I lead XR and Special Computing Development at Southern Company. Before that, I actually worked at Georgia Tech Research Institute for about 10 years or so in the DoD space. So I've been developing in VR for quite a while, also the mobile space and other things I can't talk about. Yeah.
And as Kevin said before, my name is Kornuth. I am Atlanta Chapter President for the Global Virtual Reality Augmented Reality Association. I also co-chair our Global Generative AI Committee. One of the recurring themes you're going to see here, similar to moving from print to TV to digital to mobile first, is the rate at which everything is changing here. As you noticed on those slides that Shawn shared with us, saying that some of these technologies are going to be here in 4 years, 5+ years. That's all happening now, and we're moving at an unprecedented rate. We will experience more change professionally and technologically in the next 5 to 10 years than we have in the last 100. So if you're not already employing these applications, it would be a good time to add those to your mix. If you aren't sure exactly where to start, let's make sure that you feel armed to have those conversations internally to socialize some of those initiatives. One thing that I want to point to in advance, for anyone who isn't particularly familiar with these different applications under the spatial computing umbrella, Andrew Jameson is here with us today. He's going to be giving a presentation at, he works with a Milsim company called Immersive Display Solutions, but he's going to be giving a presentation next week on the spatial computing spectrum and the XR continuum that does a really good job of explaining all these different technologies. So we'll kind of hit a high level today, but want to let you know that there are more opportunities to learn if you're interested in diving down those rabbit holes. So yeah, with that, I feel like let's go ahead and lead into our first question, and feel free to field this whoever wants. What are the key terms and concepts in the realm of spatial computing devices and interfaces that people should be familiar with? Yes, that seems like a good spot.
Thank you. Well, there are many technical details about devices, cameras utilized, etc. But I will focus on what the end user is expecting. If he wants to wear something like a smart glass that we were showcasing there, they want something comfortable, lightweight, and with a good visual quality to see the augmented reality content in front of them. Or if they are using a mobile device, they want something that is already there, augmented, or any type of augmented reality application to Instagram filters or to decide the purchase of a furniture on Amazon. So we have the mobile devices already in a place that 20 years ago was nothing to be imagined. Now we are having all the Magic Leap, Apple Vision Pro, etc. devices that they are still heavy, but they are still waiting to evolutionate into what everybody is expecting to be, and maybe the replacement for the mobile devices. So those are the main things.
Yeah, great point. And one of the recurring themes at events like this you'll start to hear more about are wearables, right? I've seen some pins, there's different integrations for AI, but you'll notice that smart glasses are going to be a thing. I think it's like 70% of professionals wear glasses. So when we're able to access either generative AI assistants or visual displays within your day-to-day, that's when these technologies start to take off. And just to give a sense for how quickly this is moving, by the time the Gen 2 Apple Vision Pros release, we will be operating at hundreds of times the processing power that those devices have. The weight of those is what it is because when you are trying to max out your processing power, whether that's for retina tracking or generating high fidelity images and videos, or if you're integrating all these different apps, the battery life goes really quickly. So one of the things that we're going to notice in advances in those wearables is how quickly those devices start to streamline and get smaller and smaller.
Adding to that, we are talking about human-computer interface devices. And that means that we are looking things through our eyes, but at the same time we must interact with them. And something that these devices must be able to accomplish is the correct hand and gesture detections, eye tracking, and also voice recognition. Because we are used to talk with Alexa, okay, the same is already available on all the Magic Leap, Apple Vision Pro. We can talk with the devices. They use AI, of course, to analyze what we are talking, and then we can create things or we can work directly with them.
Yeah, natural language processing is a big part of this equation. There's an app called HeyGen, and it's not natural vision processing, but I'm trying to illustrate the kind of the emergence of these technologies. But HeyGen, you can put whatever your video is into dozens of different languages where the face, the mouth movements, everything matches all at once. So you'll notice these paths across all these different technologies. We've been waiting for the compute power for decades, some people who've been in the space, but I remember nearly a decade ago when we were taking the Google Glass and cardboard, or we were taking a Samsung Galaxy device and we were plugging that into a Gear VR add-on, and how excited we were when the first Oculus Quest devices came. This is no longer an idea for tomorrow. These technologies are affordable, they're here, and they're going to be increasingly ubiquitous. So I guess a question I want to kind of tailor to you, Edie. Can you draw parallels between the emergence of spatial computing technologies and the rise of smartphones in terms of adoption rates and market penetration, where you see these technologies playing in?
We're actually going to see adoption rates accelerate way beyond when the first gen iPhone came out, when you think about it. That's like the true first phone that we really care about now. That's the benchmark, right? Like there were Blackberries and there were like those Nokia snake phones, but those were really not phones. I mean, they were just, kind of dumb phones, not smartphones. And the reason why things are accelerating is that technology is getting smarter, smaller, and more integrated. So the three combination of things is really making very much accessible to all of us. Like soon, you don't really need to be a brainiac to be able to like think about how do I create a VR scene, just like how we would make videos on our phone and then do some soft editing through an app. Soon, you will be able to harness that type of technology in your hands, and everyone can start creating immersion and experiences. So this is where we're going to get ourselves towards as far as how do we leverage it. And then right now it's still a new thing, like, oh, I got to hire a firm that need to do this thing for me. And you need to understand as a marketer, like what's the fit for a purpose? When do you use AR versus VR? Do you want to supplement and augment things in the real world, or do you want to take people away into a whole new experience, something new that they've never seen? So really the tools out there right now, and I think that it will accelerate over probably just the next 2-3 years. You're going to see dramatic movement in the space.
I was going to say, I really agree with that because I remember, right, I'm going to date myself now. I remember my Atari that I had for Christmas that came home. We were so excited about it, and then my uncle bought me a Commodore 64 so I could learn how to program. And I think about where we are today, where I've got a pocket computer that I use every day as part of my life. And I think about my children and how they use computers today. It's just, I'm so excited for the next couple of years to see where it actually goes. And again, I think everybody's right, is when it gets to the point where it's ubiquitous with the glasses that you're wearing and it's just part of your environment, you're just going to get used to it, and the pace of change is going to be incredible.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to that kind of combines what we're all talking about here, where I believe there's a lot of times, if you look at history, there's a lot of times the convergence of technologies that creates a unique situation. Like the iPhone, when it came out because suddenly we had a touch screen that was affordable to manufacture at mass scale. Not only that, but we had an internet, a mobile internet that was fast enough so that it was usable, because if it had been slower, if it had been the older couple of years before, it would have been completely unusable. It had to be able to carry the data. We had to have the network infrastructure in place so you could be in your car and get that data. So there's a lot of technologies that came together to make the iPhone successful, but it was at that point in time that they all came together. And I think with spatial computing, we're going to have to redefine how we use these glasses, because I don't think it's going to be where I'm going to be sitting here and you're going to be having a conversation and you're going to be having one and you're going to be having one all talking to your glasses. That's not going to work, right? Everybody can't be talking, and you also don't want to be doing this all the time. And I think with the emergent AI, and not to turn this into an AI forum or jump on that bandwagon, yeah, it's going to happen. But with the emerging AI, it's going to help us in ways that will help contextualize what our current situation is and anticipate what we need, instead of just us trying to control all the time what we need. And I think that's going to help really drive this as the headsets come down, as the weights come down, the prices come down. And then you have AI. You know, there's rumor that that's going to be huge this year at Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference. If they throw that in there as well, you know, you're talking about a nice convergence of technology at the right time.
Agreed and well said. Just to give a couple examples of those pieces, and we've kind of talked about the intersection of all these technologies, but I had an opportunity to try on the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. I don't know if anyone's seen those marketed around, but they don't have a visual display within them. But when you tap them on the top of the temple and say, what am I looking at? I had a friend show me, it says, you're looking at a driving range of people hitting golf balls, and you start to connect the dots of, wow, like think about the utility of something like this. How do I go to this place and all of a sudden it pulls a Google Maps listing, take a left at the street and talk to you there. But the reason I brought up that device is because of how small it is. For any of you who got to try the Apple Vision Pro in there, the reason that it's as heavy as it is because it does everything that we're capable of doing with the technology right now. But now that processing and compute power are improving at the rate that they are, devices are going to keep getting smaller and smaller. And then to accessibility, and one of the things that Edie talked about, it made me picture tools like Unity Census and Muse, the ability to create virtual environments and modeled environments with prompts. If you're not a coder or if your department doesn't necessarily have the full-scale budget to roll these out, these are increasingly accessible, and that's only going to continue to accelerate as a lot of these new coding and creation tools are released. So I feel like, we've talked a lot about the technology and the advances there, but I'm going to ask this to the panel, and whoever wants to take it, jump in. What predictions would you make about the stages and the timeline for consumer adoption and commercialization of spatial computing technologies in the coming years?
It's already happening. So there's a lot of companies out there playing, especially selling furniture and things like that, like IKEA, and they're starting to dabble in this space. I don't necessarily think like everything has to be through glasses because it's really moving into kind of a mixed reality and also mixed multimedia world. When you look at some of the fitness products out there, you're working out in front of the mirror and the mirror is projecting what's happening. So hands-free, you don't want to wear glasses when you're exercising, right? And then think about, the display advertising and display content perspective, how that can work with augmented reality. So if you are a Sephora or, a Morphe makeup company, that you can actually scan yourself and then start applying layers of makeup. Like, do I like this palette? Do I like that palette? And then with gesturing and things like that, you can remove it. So it really goes beyond. I think the technologies are already here. We may not be able to stitch these applications exactly together as that, but the components are there. And, with kind of like facial scanning, AI, metaverse stuff, like think about all of those type of advancements. It already exists. It's not that hard to get an accurate scan of yourself to create an avatar at all right now, using some of the tools that's out there. So how do we apply it in a mixed media application? And then how do we think about how does the consumer engage with it to do something that's helpful to them?
And let's add one more question to this, and Edie, you might want to jump in, and the rest of our panel, please, again. How does that change by customer segment? As marketers, we think about our different groups that we're catering to. How do you look at that equation?
I think it's not by segment, it's by customer need. So you instead of chasing a segment that they may want this AR, VR experience, think about how can we make people's life better through augmentation. And that's, regardless of age, a segment. My husband is actually in real estate, so he actually takes these tours called Matterport tours where you're scanning the whole entire environment. And about a year ago, he was helping a family move. And they had an 80-year-old grandmother that's going to help them pay for the house. And then, they're moving to Georgia. And she lived in another state. So through this Matterport, they hooked it up to their son's Oculus. And then so she can actually look at the whole entire house and walk around in it without ever being in Atlanta. And that's happening. She's 80 years old. So you just really have to find the right application to really resonate with the experience you're trying to create for your customers.
Well said.
I just, to kind of add to that, I think it's really, you want to keep the customer first whenever you're looking at a new technology. Don't just go for the technology, but what's the purpose of what they're doing? I think the real estate example is a great example because if you can picture yourself in the house, you're going to be willing to buy it. But imagine like you have the furniture company, you've already got the furniture laid out in the house, and now you got a virtual tour with the new furniture that you're going to buy for the house. Or better yet, you're trying to sell the house. What if you were able to scan the room? And this is available today. You can scan the room of their furniture and bring it to life in the new house. And now they've envisioned their stuff in the new place where they're trying to do. I think that's, it's there today. It's just how fast will the adoption be? Will it be 2 to 3 years? Is it going to be 5 years? I think we're kind of at a convergence here. People have mentioned AI, but like that's helping converge where we're at because the compute is there for us to actually enjoy these experiences.
Yeah, we're kind of at a stage one right now because it may not look as good today, right? Like the fidelity aspect of it is not as great, but the concept and principles and frameworks are there already. So as time goes, with kind of processing and rendering technologies and things like that, it's going to get faster and better to where things are going to look more and more real, and you can't distinct what's augmented. Like if you guys saw it in that room, you can kind of tell, like, yeah, it's kind of fake, right? But soon you're going to actually blur because the technology will get so much better.
Yeah, I would say that you've heard a lot of us talk about processing and computing. Just to give an example, let's first, how many people in the room, just by a show of hands, have experienced VR prior to the Apple Vision Pro today? Okay, so good, most of the room. And what about augmented reality? It's a good show. So I feel like before we shift the conversation into internal considerations and how do we advance these initiatives, just from a consumer perspective, how do you envision spatial computing impacting consumer behavior and engagement in the coming years? What do you see the biggest impacts being? Where's the place to start?
So I think it's already going on, like Fortnite, that may not be VR, but it's what you would consider a quote unquote metaverse, not to pull out another buzzword, which I don't like that one. But it enables people to get together socially, and they've had concerts, they've had all different sorts of different islands. Nike has their own island, so they have a lot of marketing going on in there. But I think, from a consumer level, too, as we begin to put the Ray-Bans on or put whatever glasses on as they start to shrink, there's going to be opportunities to present augmented displays in ways that, hopefully won't trip up consumers, but you can literally have a billboard anywhere, where if it's around lunchtime, you're changing the advertising as the person's walking down the street that says, this place is maybe Chinese or whatever. The AI knows your likes. It knows that you may want to go visit, or it may know, hey, you just had this last Tuesday, why don't you do Mexican today, or whatever, right? And then that would help guide you to wherever you need to go in your glasses. So that I think consumer behavior is going to be eventually putting up the phone and looking out more through the glasses, hopefully not getting even more inundated with information, but getting information that hopefully is a little more pertinent to what they're doing at that point.
That's well said. Does anyone else want to jump in?
I think it's really going to impact brand loyalty. We're going to interact and think about how to do things differently. So if you are a retail store, think about what your wish list management process might look like. Today, you're just like, yes, I'll save this. But in reality, you could have a pop-up store that's virtual, and then people can look at it through their glasses at home. And your wish list, you can actually try on. Like, if you love Nike shoes, right, you can actually see what it might look like on your feet, do a 360. And you may be able to tag the collection of shoes that you already have versus the ones that you really want, and then be able to engage and interact and play. So I think this is where, things that are very transactional today, very static, become very engaging in the future because people can really interact with it. And, you don't have to go to a store or go to the big Nike store in New York City that's 4 stories to be able to get that engagement. You can do it right in your living room.
Yeah, not to harp too much on, we will continue to harp too much on the intersection of the different technologies, but I remember when we would serve different messages, we had our automation pieces in place for our different customer personas. We were using HubSpot at the time, and that was a manual process. It took a long time to build out how that consumer was thinking, how we wanted them to think, how we were going to shift that messaging, and how we were going to drive a purchase behavior. Now, when we're using tools like Jasper AI and other generative AI tools to not only test but also define the messaging for these different segments based on your voice and existing content. When you combine that with the different visualization, whether that's VR, whether that's AR, the purchase cycle is going to be so much faster to drive those behaviors. I think was the point too. Just real quick, by a show of hands again in the audience, how many of you are already working on some form of spatial initiative within your marketing mix right now? Okay, so not a huge show of hands, and definitely would recommend trying to learn more to at least start socializing those conversations. As we know, the C-suite doesn't always want to make that allocation, but often marketers are the ones who start those internal conversations, and usually those initiatives will move more and more strategic and higher up in an organization, because it's really, really hard to say, well, what's the ROI of this experience compared to the cost when you're doing it through a straw. But when you zoom out and you look at an organization and you see, well, you can use it here, and here, the value is undeniable, but it is a challenge to get high enough in the organization to have the right conversation to advance those initiatives. So I feel like this is a good lead-in then to how do you see smaller businesses and startups leveraging spatial computing to compete with larger corporations who perhaps have been doing it for the better part of a decade already?
I think from my perspective, it's the speed that startups are going to be able to bring to the market. So in a lot of the larger corporations, you have to go through a number of hoops in order to even create the assets, have it maybe reviewed by legal for the messages that you're serving up. Cybersecurity has to be brought in. Like, there's a whole process in order to bring something to life within a large organization. With smaller startups and smaller companies, it's a lot easier to say, hey, I want to run a test with this. Let's see how does this actually work for my customer? And you're actually able to try it faster than some of the larger corporations. And you can bring the ideas to life.
Question for Gus. Gus, how often have you talked with a client or a prospective client who knows they want to use the technology but isn't necessarily sure where to start? Is that a common conversation, or do they usually have a pretty good idea what they want to do?
Yes, usually some of the clients come with a perfect idea, but most of the times they have the idea, they have the need, but there's many technologies and approach to bring that solution or to bring that product to life. For example, one of our clients is a startup company, and they are working with a container store to create a virtual pantry and populate it with the products from the container store. So, going with what you commented, they are working faster than container store. So they are building the product with us, and they are already talking with the company, with the large company, to sell it as a solution. And eventually, they're going to be generating more revenue than container store digital market. So, and that, in that case, they came with the idea of taking a picture in 2D, etc. And we showed them the 3D, the augmented reality technology, and they were amazed. And they are now having that product. So that's how we like to guide our clients when they don't have the perfect idea, or the idea could be better.
Yeah, I agree. Becoming a strategic partner for them when maybe the client isn't exactly sure what they're looking for, to be able to simplify some of those conversations goes a long way.
Yeah, the only complex part was that we had to create two applications, the way they want it and the way that we were proposing, and then our vision was better, but eventually it paid off, yes.
So, good question. Thank you, guys. So, question for Darryl here. Not all of the organizations out there necessarily want to invest in the new devices, especially with where the generations are advancing, how quickly that's moving. Are there other ways that you can employ spatial computing technologies and applications in the space, maybe on desktop or otherwise?
Yeah, so that is actually one thing that we've done. In Southern, we do try to make sure that we spin well, right? We are a power company that's regulated, and what we've done is be able to use the same tech that I would bring to VR on the desktop in 3D visualizations, digital twins, and arguably that's a little easier to share. You know, sometimes there is still resistance in putting the headset on and learning the controls. That is getting better, but onboarding is can be difficult with VR. And you know, it's not even just a generational thing. You know, a lot of times it's who's a gamer versus not a gamer. There's a lot of people my age, myself included, still game, so it's kind of easy. But if people aren't gamers, if they just don't have that that disconnect of this is my controller, it's supposed to be my hand, and I've got to figure this out, and which button do I press? It can be a frustrating experience, even if the experience itself is good, right? Desktop people kind of get it, so putting a lot of times the same tech that we would put into there, you know, really kind of helps. And I think it's going to help a little bit too with the Vision Pro because, you know, Apple, for better or for worse, they have their ecosystem, and the ecosystem is very tightly integrated. And as a developer point of view, it's very similar to develop things from one device to another. Now, that's not to say it's easy, but it's still very similar. And not only does the customer get a nice UX that's all across the board, but you know, from a developer and a cost point of view, you're spending a lot less time because you're able to reuse a lot more code. So we definitely have put things on desktop that are 3D.
Thank you. As a little bit of a leading question for anyone here who's going to start trying to advance an initiative like this internally, that cross-device collaboration, maybe someone isn't comfortable in a headset, maybe they aren't necessarily wanting to look at that in an AR application. The ability to look at it on desktop is very much helpful for some of those conversations. But questions for, this is for both Shawn and Edie, and you guys are welcome to jump in too. What are some challenges and solutions that you've run into as marketers through the lens of not just a specific thing you're trying to do for a consumer, but you have this idea, you have to get budget for it, maybe it's a new budget, maybe it's not already allocated. What does that look like internally? How do you make this idea real?
So I work in the innovation lab, and so the whole idea behind my team is to bring ideas to life. And the sooner that you can get it into somebody's hands and they can visualize what you're trying to bring to life, that really kind of helps the conversation. And then you have to understand how much budget it would take to actually fully bring it to life. But if you can spend a weekend or a week getting something and bringing it in front of an executive where you can really show them, and that's going to bring the excitement, which at the higher up the food chain you go, the better your budget's going to be in the long term. And so it's often getting that executive buy-in that this is something that you want to build, and here's how you're going to test it to bring it to life. And the way that I like to put it, what's the $5 experiment to get to the $10 experiment, to get to the $1,000 experiment, or for some of the larger companies, what's the $50,000 experiment to get to the $100,000 experiment to the $1 million budget, where you've got it actually at scale. But you've got to have that small test which brings it to life for whoever you're trying to sell it to and get them to buy into it. And then I think back to some of like the Gen AI work. Well, a lot of what happened was that the executives went home and their kids came home from college and they're like, hey dad, or hey mom, have you seen this? And that created the buzz. So sometimes it's a convergence of events outside of your control that help bring a project to life.
I would add, I would add to that, getting them in the headset. That's just crucial. I mean, there's so many people here in the audience who's been in a headset, and
Let me just get two guys and then we sketch on something and let's figure out how do we make this work and, you know, kind of make a thing out of it. Once you kind of get enough little proofs along the way with your iterations of POCs, and then make it a fun thing, like, you know, do a digital playground day at your company. Here's all the different cool wares and things like that, and you know, bring it all in, get people more comfortable in this whole spatial concept. And then a lot of people, you know, if you think like it's a kid's toy, you watch your kids playing on it and they're sweaty and they're, you know, doing their musical beatbox thing. Yeah, exactly. And but they're like, oh, I'm not going to do that. But there's so much more that you can. So just make it open, make it fun. If you're a marketer, a technologist, think about how do you kind of create events around that, and do like a little digital playground happy hour or something like that, just to get people in kind of a comfortable way that's, not like an intense thing that they have to spend a long time with you, but in 5 minutes you can if you just try it, you would understand how this technology is different.
So yeah, I'm going to give an example of kind of that proof of concept journey. It's a full enterprise level rollout in just a moment, but if anyone here is looking to put on an innovation day, a lot of what we do driving collaboration through VRARA is connecting a consumer and business need with a local provider. We don't have a conflict of interest as far as who we promote. Like, it's all about highlighting the community and developing the ecosystem. So if it is at all helpful to talk through an idea that you have and trying to make it real, please feel free to reach out. So back to a specific example of what we talked about, the agency that I used to work at. Josh over there works there now. We actually had done a proof of concept app in the HoloLens for Porsche. Porsche realized, how do you get a senior exec to spend $250,000 and picture getting an initiative like that off the ground? Well, it was so successful that they have since rolled that out with all of their models. It's an iPad app now. And then I remember just last summer there was an enterprise summit that we had where they were talking about how remote techs used to go on site to help fix cars. And before, that was something that they text, it's the part behind the thing. No one knew what they were talking about. The next one was a picture in mobile. It was like, well, it's one of those few parts. Then it was a video, and you kind of had it narrow it down a little bit more. And then all of a sudden now, you can have an on-site mechanic who's looking at smart glasses, and then the 3D model blows up, and you're like, it's that replacement part. So the ability to move your way up in the organization as you're advancing some of these initiatives, to realize that other divisions, especially in highly matrixed organizations, also have business needs that are going to benefit from these allocations, and finding out where they are and driving collaboration together, not just from your corner or cubicle of the world, would be really helpful. But I feel like, do our panelists, do you guys have anything else that you want to add before we open it up to Q&A? No? Yeah, so with that, if anyone has any questions, we'd love to address those.
How far do we think we are away from like a wearable with the power of, what Apple is, looking to do in the vision, right? Being a part of everyday life. I mean, the cost point of that is comparable, I guess, to a laptop, but it's not going to be as ubiquitous as the iPhone anytime soon. So how far out do we think we are?
Well, that's a tough question. So the Vision Pro itself does have the power of a laptop. It's got an M2 chip in there, which is the same thing as last year's MacBook Pros. It's got another chip that it does just for the processing. With this headset, obviously Apple doesn't want the battery pack connected to you. They don't want I would probably argue they probably don't even want it to be fully immersive. They just really want the spatial computingness of it. But I would say, depending on how the tech on the lenses can go, that's their secret sauce. But I would be surprised if it would be much more than 10 years. Yeah, I mean, just look how fast the iPhones and things iterated once they started. Once you start down that path, you're lowering manufacturing costs, you're lowering the chip dies, the size of the chips and everything else. And I mean, that's part of the heaviness on here, is because it does have to have cameras. It does have to, they did put that extra thing on the outside, which I'm not that thrilled with. But if they're taking away their cameras, if they don't have to have it immersive, they don't have to have the extra camera on the outside, they're increasing the battery life. So yeah, I'd say 10-ish years if I had to guess.
And yeah, one quick add to that. I think at CES 2 years ago at this point, there was already glasses that you could just take on and off. The compute just wasn't there yet. And so we're getting there. It's just like the compute's got to get smaller and the batteries have to get smaller.
Yeah, the glasses need to be good enough too, right? Because the beauty of the Vision Pro is you have the the windows and everything else in front of you. You have they're casting shadows on the ground. For those of you who got to see it or not, you know, when you put a window out there, it casts a shadow, and that seems like such a small detail, but it also adds to the immersiveness. It lets you know that this thing is there, right? They didn't have to do that, but certainly it's one of those things, you know, that you don't notice, but you would probably notice if it wasn't there, right? So yeah, I think the lens tech is really the key point there, and what's going to be good enough on the glasses here to be able to give us that.
So I don't mean to be disagreeable, and I think this is an important point here where there are a lot of differing opinions. We are multiple chip generations behind even within the Apple Vision Pro right now, and the reason it's so heavy is because we were trying to max it out with what we had, but there have been, you know, recent AR chips that had 16x the compute power of anything else we'd ever seen before. And then I don't know anyone who's seen like the NVIDIA GTC keynote from Jensen Huang. And at one point he's holding a $10 billion and a $5 billion chipset in his mind that has processing capabilities that we've never seen before. So it could be 3 years or less, and it really could be 10 years, just depends how we cut into that pie.
It's going to be an expensive headset.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've got a question over here, and if anybody does, I'll come to you and bring the mic.
Yeah, so I have a question. I'm looking at this from the lens of someone in advertising and just thinking about the adoption of something from, you know, linear to connected TV. There's always something new and emerging. And so often, you know, we're trying to educate people. So I'm wondering, from your lens, I love what you said. Someone said it earlier about, you know, if you want to get somebody to adopt the product, the quicker you get it into their hands, the quicker you show proof of concept, the quicker they'll adopt it. So do you think that the bigger barrier of entry or the bigger barrier of getting people to adopt this technology is truly fear, lack of knowledge, and just the education piece, or do you think it's the cost for these companies to adopt it quicker?
Say all of those things. I mean, the PGA just put out an app for the Apple Vision Pro. I'm not a big golf fan. Great game. But being able to fully immerse yourself in that and look at 3D models of the golf course, it completely changes the viewing experience. So it's the combination of all of those variables and how quickly we're able to leverage them. And yeah, it's for some people, like if you're in the C-suite, usually that's a pretty risk-averse mentality, right? And they aren't necessarily wanting to leverage those tools right away. They're not always early adopters. So it's a combination of socializing those pieces, even if it's not what you want to present yet, even if it's some multiple generations out idea of like, hey, here's this thing I want you to check out. It's going to take 2 minutes. It's not the one you're going to use, but look at it because at the next generation I'm going to be in touch, and then I'm going to ask for budget, and just start those conversations now so that when you do, it's not a surprise.
Something that I would like to add is related to the lack of knowledge on the people that make decisions, and showing them, as they were commenting, is a great way to advance things. We are continuously showing augmented reality and virtual reality, but sometimes we show something that has 6 or 8 years old, and they are amazed because they never saw it. So that's making it possible then for them to see, and also getting into the conversation with the decision maker about the value that will bring to their consumers or the revenue that they will get, incorporating that into the sales process or the manufacturing process. That is key. But it takes time, and it takes a long conversation with the clients.
Good question here.
And it takes it not being $4,000.
Yeah.
So speaking from the lens of creating like the assets and that pretty much create the experiences, I would like to get your perspective on the opportunity space that spatial computing provides for new economy for creators. So looking at potential integrations of blockchain, for IP licensing, smart contracts, royalties, and pretty much looking at like what Epic Games and Disney is pretty much doing building worlds, and how does this provide opportunity for creators?
So on the Fortnite platform with Disney, Epic has done a good job with creating also Lego in Fortnite, right? So it's kid friendly. So they're even targeting a different demographic really than Fortnite. Fortnite is kind of teen to adult type thing. Lego is younger teen to before that. And now they've gone so far with the newest UEFN or UE Fortnite that users can actually develop their own islands with licensed Lego, right? So there's a lot of opportunities there for creators to actually use the tools that are in place to be able to create these islands and make real money from them. Same kind of thing with Roblox, so I kind of steer away from that. But so I think the opportunity for creators is going to be really more driving what is new and not just what is currently there. Because back to the AI thing, that is a fear. Of what's going to happen when I can just tell my computer to create this thing for me. But you still have to have that artistic direction. And in the case of some of these games or some of these opportunities, you still have to have the direction of what is this going to feel like? What is it going to sound like, right? And it's going to be a long time before we're there with AI. Even though it can help you get to that point, it'll just have to be used, as a tool to get you there. But to your point, though, I think those opportunities kind of exist today.
This is the area where creativity really comes in and is unbound, right? This is just very, very entry level that we're getting into this new space. And from a creator economy perspective, it's what you end up make of it. So we don't necessarily know how we can grow and tap into this in the future, but people are going to figure this out. There's going to be all sorts of app marketplaces, for spatial computing and all of these type of things. And how does it tie into other technologies like blockchain, AI? We don't know yet until the creators create. So today, there's a lot of disconnects. I don't necessarily think people think like normal people be like, well, what's an NFT to me? Like, what does it do exactly, right? So things like that, we have to connect the dots as far as how we're using the technology and what purpose that's for, whether it's to entertain, to inform, to educate, whatever that is. I think it's really based on the imagination of the people that's doing the creating, and we will get there.
One thing I'd like to add to that is how many people in this room have bought a skin for Fortnite or another game that they played? Just get a show of hands. So there's a large number. How many have bought them for their kids? So I look back over the course of the internet in early 2000s, people were trying to sell a digital rock. And I want to adopt this rock and have it on the internet and I want to see it grow. 20 years later, we figured out how to sell digital rocks on the internet through microtransactions. So where does that go as a creator where you own your own content? And then as a marketer, where does it go for my brand? So say, for example, I have the Kimberly-Clark logo in Roblox or Fortnite. Who owns that? Do I own that as the company? So think about how you're advertising and how you can partner with groups like Fortnite and other games where the kids are today because they're going to be the adopters of it in the future.
We got another question up here.
Do you mind if I just?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I realize we're running out of time. Looking at this through the lens of reskilling the current workforce and also in creating future employment opportunities and educational programs at universities like Georgia Tech, KSU, SCAD, Georgia State, all the schools around here. Those conversations are in the works now. So that pipeline is going to include not just graduating students, but also people who are already in the workplace who are reskilling as we speak.
So as we have seen that AI and spatial computing has been developed on the AR glasses, but major factor which is affecting is latency. So from 2018, from HoloLens 2, Quest, and even in Apple Vision Pro, the real-time application of these glasses is restricted. So do you feel is there any type of improvement, or will there be any improvement in the future? Because even Apple claims to be good in terms of pass-through latency, but still the computation depends on high cloud performance.
Yeah, absolutely. The recent chip advances that are already done, new Snapdragon chips, have a massive impact to that equation. But again, by the time those current chips are employed, there's going to be 4 generations ahead of that, and we're talking hundreds of times the compute power in relation to past benchmarks.
Yeah, question.
Sorry, I need more words. So Apple Vision Pro is mainly sort of media entertainment. They're talking about productivity, but the use cases aren't necessarily there. The Quest, you kind of see across the board some things happening in gaming. You see AAA studios come in, but then leave. They're just not seeing enough people here. When we talk about consumer-facing advertisement in headset, what do you guys think it'll take for something like this to be sustainable and start happening, quarterly or yearly?
I'll jump in here. Darryl was actually just talking about this a little. We had a conversation the other day, but the Apple Vision Pro, the Meta Quest iterations, they're looking at the same future build from a different perspective. Meta came in; they already had a bunch of money invested. So how do we realize some of that value now? So they have, a large entertainment and media ecosystem. You can watch NBA games and watch college basketball. Apple Vision Pro is about enabling those developer level applications. So by the time the next generation of these devices come, there's content that's going to be able to go in them. So it's going to be kind of this leapfrog piggyback as we move towards what you're asking about. But I think it's going to happen. I could tell you how long I think it's going to take. I'm probably wrong. I think it's moving so much faster than any of us even realize yet.
Yeah, and on the adoption piece of that, I think what's going to need to happen is people are going to want to put the device on, and I find that that's a little different with the Vision Pro because when I put the device on, I can still develop in it. I have a virtual screen. I have a lot of other apps that are running, Word, Teams, everything else. But what Apple is very good at is not only making this device easy to use, but making you want to be in the device. And I'm not saying necessarily this one that we have here. I mean, it does get kind of heavy. But one of the applications that you were talking about was golf, right? And then they also have some soccer applications, some baseball applications. So imagine that you're sitting here in your apartment or whatever, and you have a 100-inch screen, which you don't have otherwise. Not only that, but like in the NBA playoffs, you could have up to 5 different games going on, and you just flip them over into here, right? Just flip them into the middle, and now you're watching that main game, and you can still keep your eye on the others. But in football, you can have the football game going on. You have a 3D representation of the field so that you can see the play, run that play back, see what's going on the play right here. And on the left side, you not only have the game on, but you have your stats, right? You have the quarterback stats, whatever. I'm not a football guy, but I know people love their stats in football. And on the other side, you have other stats, right? So it's not so much getting to see this cool stuff, but it's when you go to your friend's house and that friend doesn't have that cool stuff. And at that point, you will want to put that on because now you're missing it, right? Now you're having to actually dig in your pocket and pull out your phone to get those stats. And who wants to do that? Because that's, 2023. I mean, right? So I think that's what we're going to get to. And I think it's going to be there. Like, it will be there within the next headset or so. If it gets a little cheaper, just a little bit more lightweight, we're not talking 10 years for that. That technology is here. They even proved it with the, I think it was a little Pixar cartoon. I'm not sure if you guys saw some of that where they had a football game going on in real time and a Pixar cartoon thing was representing the players. Well, that was just proving the technology that we can do this. We can have the chips in the football. We can know where the people are. We can know where they are spatially on the field. That's just proving that technology because that was being shown and rendered in real time, which is the exact same thing that would happen in your living room. So we're there. It's just little cheaper devices.
There's always an ecosystem problem when it comes to cross-platform utilization. And Apple may be the best, but they're also the best at building wall gardens with giant moats around it, right? This is Apple technology only. If you're not an Apple fan, you cannot be in our ecosystem. And we're going to create our own development language different than anybody else's that no one else can be on our platform. And this is the problem whether you're Meta, Google, Apple. For us as marketers, that we really want adoption, but you have to pick the walled garden that your customer might be in. If you want to kind of access people in masses, it's going to be very, very hard to do that. The first stop is really thinking about how do we bring people into our experience, into a room where we curate the experience. At first, you can control the technology that way, but until one day where there's some common protocols and common, development languages and things like that, going through a common framework where you can be cross-platform, it is really going to be hard for us to reach everyone.
One thing to add with that, when I first built AR experiences with the AR Kit, we adopted Apple's initial language that they had for that. And we had to completely retool because it wasn't compatible with all of the 3D engines that were out there. And so, kind of lesson learned, it's great to have the walled garden, but how can I speak to the other ecosystems? Because very quickly, I wanted to go from Apple to Android, and I couldn't do it. And so, you've got to kind of pick your poison to get started with for that proof of concept or pilot that you're doing, but then how do you scale it up so that there's a broader adoption rate? And also back to your question, I think, what is that killer app? Or what's that thing that I have to have? To your point is, if I'm a football fan and I like the stats in the game are right there in front of me and it's fully immersive, and that's like I have to have that, that's going to be the point where you're going to start seeing more adoption because it is missing as part of the ecosystem today.
Yeah, let's remember that on mobile devices, we had about 150 applications.
Yep.
We utilize 6, 7. But that's the key. Those applications that we mostly utilize, they must be present on the Vibration Pro or any other device, and the device must be comfortable, and we are not far away from that. At the same time, in parallel, the industry, the manufacturing companies, are reinforcing the investment on this type of devices and technologies all the time. So it will be something for end consumers, but at the same time, it doesn't stop on the end consumers. The manufacturing companies and other industries are using similar devices, lightweight devices also, with just only one mirror, not two, a screen. And that continuously is evolving and generating more technology at the same time, and including NASA, military environments, etc. So the technology is moving faster thanks to all those players that are in the game.
Guys, give this group a round of applause. Thanks again for taking your time. Thank you, Adam and VRARA for sponsoring. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. That's what they say. GT is going to kick us out of this room. I encourage you guys, if you want to talk to these folks or network amongst yourselves, feel free to in this public space.